G'day and welcome to another Carnage house production. It's another episode of the Young Aussie Startup Series. Today we have another special guest. They're all special, but this one is also special. Elisa Lillicrap. Elisa, how are you going?
Good, thank you.
Did I say that right?
Not quite. You got the surname right, of course. Who doesn't get crap right? Elisa.
Elisa.
Yeah.
My apologies. Probably won't be the last mistake I make on this podcast, but hopefully you'll correct me.
Easy.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what LogieQ is?
Yeah. So basically, LogieQ is two things. Challenge-based hiring and soft skill passports. And the idea of both is that it focuses on potential through merit rather than being a typical recruitment process that is often filled with a lot of subjectivity and bias. So the idea behind it is pretty much to help a lot of individuals who come from disadvantaged backgrounds or are the typical first years, second years coming into university that often don't have much experience at all. And the idea is basically to focus on their potential ability to succeed. And the way that we do that is by giving them the opportunity to complete these different challenges that simulate these real-world tasks. So something like, for example, if you were applying for a marketing role, instead of, completing an essay in 1,000 words or less, why would you like to become a marketing intern?
Sure.
It's actually about doing the real tasks that you would typically do in that role, and then using that as an opportunity to demonstrate to future employers that, hey, I may not have ever worked in a marketing intern role. However, I am willing to Google search. I am willing to learn the skills, the tools to be able to do a typical task that I would normally do. And then the other side of it is with skill passports. And the really cool thing about this is what we're able to do is track all these different skill development through the challenges that you complete. And then we quantify that process into different scores, into breaking down your different soft skills, your different hard skills, and then pretty much that stays with you throughout your lifetime. That changes over time, of course. And the best part about it is we use that data to then auto match you to different employers, different role opportunities. So the idea there is that you don't need to apply more than once.
Right.
So instead of you having to write 50 cover letters,
Sure.
you do one application process, and then we use that to personalize the different job opportunities that best fit your skills, your strengths, and your interests. And then we use that also to get you through to the first round recruitment process. Right. So while we don't cover, I guess, it can't get you to the end stage where it's you only do that once and then you get the job like that. The idea, though, is that instead of doing that initial online process, that does often take a lot of people's time. You're able to just go, yep, you're able to get into these different role opportunities. You have a really high chance, and then skip to the interview process.
Sure. Well, that sounds like something I definitely would have needed, and it would have saved me a lot of time. I know when I was looking for jobs, I had to upload 50 unique cover letters, set up campaigns on Seek, LinkedIn, all that type of stuff. But that sounds like it saves a lot of time for people who are looking for jobs. What does it do particularly for the employers? Would you say that's different to what's already out there on the market?
Yeah, so one of the big things there that we noticed, and I guess it links back to the reason why we started to go down this route, was that with a lot of existing recruitment processes, with the resume screening, keyword searching, structured, unstructured interviews, there's actually a lot of research that demonstrates this to be highly ineffective. And despite how commonly used they are, what the number one most effective strategy is actually this idea of simulating those on-job tasks. So questions that are more situational based in interviews are often better than saying, oh, what did you do in your past job? How would you demonstrate your leadership skills? Things like that. And so for us, when we started digging a bit further into this, we found that a lot of employers, when they take their candidates through the entire interview process, a lot of them are still very unconfident as to whether or not this person will do quite well on the job, even after that whole entire recruitment process. And that tells us that what we already have existing is ineffective. And so that validated the research piece. And then one of the things that we really wanted to focus on when we spoke to employers was being able to quantify that process. So by introducing these challenges that aligned with the number one most effective hiring strategy, we're able to provide a lot more data points around that. So it takes the subjectivity out of it, and then also use that to actually start predicting, almost like how a lot of existing marketing, automated marketing and advanced marketing platforms and tools go about the process with analytics in determining like your customer segments. So the idea here is that pretty much employers are able to predict what type of profiles are going to be most effective for their type of roles, and then we use that to actually match it to the candidates in our network.
Right. So. Well, that sounds like it's way more effective than any interview process / hiring process I've ever been involved in. How, in terms of the actual analytics, have you been able to measure, for example, how much more effective your method is compared to the traditional method? Like, what metrics would you use? Would it be something like how long they actually stay in the job, whether they're retained, whether they're promoted, or how would you actually measure the effectiveness of your strategy?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think the key thing there is things such as time to hire. So the idea is that through this auto matching process, we're able to obviously reduce the time it takes between the employer actually scavenging out and using all the different platforms from Indeed to LinkedIn to Seek, and spending a lot of time just making that post, publishing it, and then waiting for up to like sometimes it can be a couple of months just to get a sufficient pool of candidates applying for the role. And so that's kind of the core metric there. The other thing, I guess, would be also in terms of just quality of applicants. So that's something that we haven't been rigorously looking into, but it's something we do want to, I guess, pay more attention to, which is, you know, that links with things such as retention. But obviously these type of metrics are much harder to measure because it does require it to be over a longer period of time and after the person gets hired. So, yeah. For sure. Do you find particularly that there are, for example, students who come straight out of university who might have had a rough year in terms of marks or grades or whatever, but they understand and they're aware of the fact that they can actually perform on the job tasks much better than a bunch of people or a bunch of their cohort who would have performed much better academically? Have you found, for example, you are attracting more of those type of candidates, or those type of candidates do progress better than they otherwise would have using the existing process? Yeah, definitely. Those type of candidates, I mean, obviously we're still in the early days, and often when, you know, your brand or your organization isn't as well known, you're going to attract the people that are often initiative takers. So we do, and we did initially have a lot of people who, you know, they're from the University of Sydney or UNSW. We've scavenged through their resumes, so top marks, and quite a number of different work experiences and whatnot. And so for us, it's being a bit more active in terms of our distribution strategies and marketing channels to actually target that specific demographic of students that, you know, they do want to pursue a particular job or role, but they just don't have the confidence to do so because they feel like, oh, since I don't have much experience, then I don't stand a chance against anyone. So, yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely a valuable service. And I know personally that when I graduated out of university, I had a bunch of friends and had a bunch of people who I knew who felt they didn't have internships at any of the big four banks or any of the investment banks. So they thought there was basically no point in them even applying to get into any of the kind of the major graduate programs that were out there. I don't know, obviously, kind of the effectiveness of those graduate programs in terms of retention and how happy they are with the graduates as they are, but I would definitely say that from my personal experience, there are a whole range of individuals who get left out by that process who might be good on the job. Way better soft skills than they do kind of those hard skills, numerical, analytical, whatever, which is still necessary, obviously, but not always the things that will keep you in the job or progressing. Obviously, we're in the midst of COVID-19. I don't know if we're practicing social distancing to the extent that we should. We'll get a ruler out and we'll see. How has COVID-19 in particular affected LogieQ, or is it making it easier or harder for you?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, it's clear that the supply of jobs has significantly reduced and it's shifted across different industries. So now we're seeing obviously supermarkets like Woolworths, Coles, a lot of the typical, I guess, low-level work that people would describe it as becoming a lot more critical. Things like customer service, customer centers and whatnot. And the reason, and obviously government industries as well, government agencies. But the problem there is with a lot of the organizations in the private sector, a lot of them are shutting down. A lot of the small businesses, startups, just don't have the capacity to hire anyone to the point that they are letting go people. And so for us, the big challenge there is being able to, I guess, engage different employers across the industries that we'd like to be able to supply those role opportunities for a lot of the candidates in our network.
Yeah.
On the positive side, however, clearly there's a lot of job seekers.
Sure.
I don't know if you can call that a positive though, because obviously we don't want so many people unemployed. But what this does, I think, provide an opportunity for is for those individuals to actually reflect and reassess, okay, what are the specific career opportunities, industries that I actually think are worthwhile pursuing and that are more sustainable in these times of crises. And that does give them time to develop on their own skills and sort of go back to the board and say, okay, what are some things that I can learn, develop and work on that will make myself more employable? So in that sense for us, what we're actually doing and what we recently did this week was launch a COVID-19 campaign. And the idea behind that is pretty much we just want to help as many different young people, especially those who recently got displaced and became unemployed, and just get them connected to the employers that are either hiring right now or the ones that have paused their hiring, but then as soon as COVID-19 ends, the relationship has already been built. And so the idea there is if we're able to even connect them from a relationship perspective and go, hey, we know that you guys normally hire for these particular roles. Well, we've actually got candidates in our pipeline that match your criteria, match your culture fit as well, based on what you've told us. Check them out. We've pre-vetted them for you. And then pretty much the idea is that when they do start hiring, they're able to immediately go to those people and say, yep, I've already got ready to go candidates.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that they would definitely appreciate that as well. Have you found as well that kind of that the jobs that are hiring, they're being more particular about vetting and the qualifications that they're looking for, because obviously there's not as much cash lying around. They've got to be more careful with who they're hiring and what they're actually paying these people.
Yeah.
Have you found that they're being more meticulous with the hiring process?
Yeah, definitely. I think though it depends on which industries and which organizations you're looking at. Again, if you're looking at the private sector, yes, definitely a lot more meticulous. If we were to compare that to the government roles, that's just being opened up to pretty much anyone, including Woolworths, those type of organizations that need more staff and can absolutely get anyone on board. And so at the moment, we're trying to engage more of those organizations. So we're actually shifting the focus on the typical employers that we do engage with to the ones now that are much more involved with the hiring process and need those recruits. And so for them, it's very much open to the entry-level experience roles, which is what we try and do. Because obviously the idea is students can go online to Indeed, LinkedIn, all these different platforms out there. But a lot of the time, those employers aren't curated for student candidates. Right. That is limited work experience expected, not too many skills. And the idea there is to be able to connect them to employers that do actually believe in focusing on the soft skills and potential side, rather than going straight out, oh, can you do X, Y, Z? Can you do these skills that are more like disciplinary expertise? So for us, it's being able to merge that, I guess, curated student experience. So it's actually optimal for both the student and the employer, because it means that students aren't going into roles and then suddenly hating on them and then leaving, and then that becomes a retention issue for employers. So this whole matching process is able to improve on the metrics on both sides as well.
Yeah, well, it sounds way more efficient than what they're doing already.
Yeah.
But I can totally understand that you would be focusing on the public sector, considering there's that much money that's being pumped into public sector as it is, / bailouts as it goes. You've mentioned as well that you're particularly focusing on students as well. Is there the potential to expand that? Is that part of the kind of the development pipeline for you guys?
At the moment, honestly, we are just wanting to focus on young people, so 18 to 25-year-old range. So that does go a bit beyond the typical university level as well. And just the reason for that is obviously at those different ages, your level of experience is often quite limited. When you go beyond that, in a lot of the roles that employers hire for above that age, it does become much more critical for you to have certain disciplinary expertise, which kind of trumps what we're trying to focus on, which is pretty much giving you that voice and that platform to demonstrate your skills in a different, non-traditional way. So, instead of having a resume and listing out experiences, what do you do if you don't have those experiences? So, that's kind of the primary focus for us. Yeah.
You've mentioned that it's part of the hiring practice, and what you guys do in particular is you set kind of challenges as a way to measure the soft skills of the applicants. I'm not sure how many people have you had run through the process of doing the challenges?
Yeah, so actually at the moment, it's really interesting because with the official challenges that we have on the platform, we haven't actually publicly launched that. We've kept everything private beta at the moment.
Yeah.
So what we've been doing is, and the very first challenge we deployed was actually through Messenger chatbot as a quick test and validation. We got really creative, and weirdly enough, this links to the initial inspiration, which was Pokemon Go. Very, very weird. But nevertheless, since then we've been kind of testing and trying to validate these challenges, because the thing is, unfortunately, it's not as simple as us, whipping it out of nowhere. What we're going through the process right now is actually leveraging a lot of existing psychology frameworks and research. We're trying to base our challenges off 6,000 plus academic research articles, and then combine that with industry applied practice.
Sure.
So what we do is we actually go out to employers and say, hey, what are your thoughts on these challenges? Getting feedback and going through that process to refine them. Because the thing is, they are the basis of our whole scoring methodology and how we break down the profiles, I guess, of students' skills. So these are kind of critical, pretty critical for the ultimate outcome. So what we've been doing in the meantime is pretty much, I guess, sectioning off different modules and testing them out with our private beta users on our platform at the moment. So isn't publicly launched yet, but soon to be.
Because one of the interesting things I would find particularly is that, because assuming that you're there for several years, what you'd actually get is a data set of kind of similar age people over a time span.
Yeah.
So you'd actually be able to kind of measure the way in which different cohorts or different ages, their level of soft skills and what they're particularly good at, which would be interesting to find out. And I'm sure that it would actually be super practical and actually needed in terms of seeing what employers are looking for, as well as what the skills that employees as a group have. So for example, I have a sister who's 19. I would find it particularly interesting to find out what soft skills my age group have compared to my sister who's 4 years younger, for example.
Yeah.
And that would be something that I'm sure as well, potential companies who are trying to market to me would also be trying to market to her as well, but they might need different strategies. So that would actually be super interesting. And that was the only reason I was asking, because I was going to see if you actually had any insight into kind of what the particular soft skills are that people my age or graduates have compared to boomers or Gen Y or Gen Z.
I guess it's more so with the younger generations, obviously with the uptake of technology at an earlier age, those guys on the technical skill side are going to be much more competent than any other previous generational group.
Sure.
But the thing is, for them, the soft skills can be lacking because this massive focus on digital communication, digital tools, it means that they're actually not engaging and utilizing and practicing their soft skills day to day. So the human-to-human connection, being able to just understand people, empathize, all these different things from emotional intelligence and leadership and whatnot. I mean, you can always argue that having access to repositories like Google with mass loads of content and ability to learn these things is great. That's great for knowledge-based skills. However, again, it's those type of activities and reading through content, that's not what develops your soft skills at the end of the day. What develops it is being able to fundamentally apply it in real world, and that means going away from your laptop and phone and whatnot. So that
would be a struggle. I think the production assistant might struggle with that, but that means not to put her on blast. She's doing a great job here at the Carnage house. Well, that's pretty interesting, and I would definitely be keen to see like how that progresses as it goes on, because that data is actually quite valuable and it's super interesting, way more interesting than any government survey would be. And actually, it would actually be a much better indicator of all those soft skills than kind of stupid survey that gets handed around at Sydney Uni. Not to put Sydney Uni on blast. One of the things I tried to capture with this series is the challenges that startup founders face, particularly really young ones. What has been the biggest challenge for you so far? Yeah,
so 100% the biggest challenge for me has been, as a student, so I'm still currently studying at the University of Sydney. I still hold a part-time job. That's where the income comes through. And then also working on the startup, it can be really tricky to be able to manage all these different things, because you have all these different expectations, you have all these different projects. And so just from an energy perspective, it can be very hard switching between all these different things, and your mind is buzzing about all three things every single day. Nevertheless, I mean, aside from that though, I think as a team and as an organization, for us, in our co-founder team, myself and my other co-founder Brent, we're both non-technical founders. And I think a lot of people can relate to this one, where, we didn't come from coding backgrounds or whatnot. And so it's been great in this day and age, however, because there's a lot more tools and resources that we can actually use, even as non-tech people, to be able to learn and build out pretty good products, actually. And so something that we've been using is Bubble. Highly recommend. And it's a Y Combinator startup, and pretty much you're able to build out different apps, different platforms using no code. Or if you are a coder, you can use code as well. And so we've been actually using that to build out our product, and it's been really effective. Like instead of spending months, building out JavaScript-backed code websites and platforms, we've been able to pump through and add in new features almost week to week, which has been pretty amazing, especially, coming from non-technical backgrounds. And so obviously you learn a lot along the way. But yeah, it's been really tricky as well, because I think a lot of the time investors, other stakeholders will question the credibility of your founding team being, where's the tech person? It's like, well, us two non-technical people learnt the technical skills required, not to this level, but we're moving along. And so, that's been a challenge, obviously balancing that learning curve piece and actually executing on that. But the really great thing, again, is we've been able to talk to different people, get their advice on things. And honestly, if you're willing to learn, you'll learn and build things out. So
100%. I guess as well, like as you mentioned, having a non-technical background 10 years ago would have been way more difficult to get funding for and things like that. But you mentioned like that's some of the conversations that you have with people and potential investors. What do you think are the top things that investors are looking for when looking to invest in a startup?
So team is normally the number one thing. Often they look at the credibility of the team, your experience, particularly the domain experience. So let's say that you're doing a biotech company, or obviously if you're coming from just a pure business background, commerce degree, they're going to be like, where did the biotech passion come from?
Sure.
And expertise. And so I think this does actually link with a very common challenge among younger founders, where we're not 45-year-olds that have come out from, 30, 20 years of work experience, becoming managers, senior managers in these type of organizations and building up a client base and whatnot. We don't have that. And so it's really hard to convince investors that as a young person, especially, that's already questionable. Oh, okay. What does this person have? And then using that on top of just having to, have a great business idea, it does fundamentally come down to the team, because they're putting money into a team that they trust and that can execute. And the other thing, though, on, I guess, the business side is differentiation. That's the number one question that comes up with every investor. It's why you guys any different to competitors. And for us, we're in the recruitment space. That's highly competitive. And that's insane, which is also why we are trying to go a little bit more niche and focus more on the student market. But yeah, so I'd say those are the big things there.
Awesome. Well, I think those are actual practical things that people can take on board if they're looking for a startup or to develop their own startup. I've definitely heard the domain experience has been kind of a recurring thing, and obviously that's incredibly difficult for people who are young. I mean, even if you do have a degree, for example, in mechanical engineering or something that is quite specific, if you haven't actually worked in mechanical engineering, studying it is way different to actually working in the industry. And often people will tell you that you learn more in the first week on the job than you do in the 3 years at university studying. Like that's a thing that I've heard over and over again. Often there's a knock to people who go to university, but that's neither here nor there. What does kind of the next 6 months look like for you in terms of business development, would you say?
So big focus, I guess, over the next 6 months. Actually, I'll bring it back. The focus for the next month is obviously cranking out this COVID-19 campaign and just focusing on as many of the candidates that we engage through this initiative in actually being able to connect them to either the employers that are still hiring right now or post-COVID season. So that will probably take up actually over the next 3 to 4 months even. But I guess simultaneously, we're shifting our big focus from product to more customer side. So one of the biggest mistakes that I think a lot of startups make, and we've made this mistake, where we've become complacent in actually having conversations with your potential customers, because what happens is when you get so excited about a product feature that you want to build out, the problem with that is you become so focused on one thing that you forget, hang on a second, have I actually... Do my customers even want this feature, or is this something that I quickly researched? And there's a difference between finding, or I guess trying to validate problems through secondary research online through different business reports and Google, versus actually speaking to a customer and going, how much would you pay for this? Or would you pay for this now? And the reality is it can be a very, very different story, no matter how many reports that you read. And so I guess ingraining that into a weekly process where, we do the 10 by 10 every single morning.
What's a 10 by 10?
Which is, so I got to do a shout out to Ben at Incubate for this one, who taught us this. But pretty much it's, before 10 a.m., the idea is you set up 10 calls with the customer each day.
Okay.
And so it forces you, because often the time it's a numbers game, right? You just got to get exposure to different customers and whatnot. And even having something as simple as a 10-minute call can make all of the difference in just determining, okay, does this person fit my segment? Is our product something of value to them? Why is it? Why is it not? And then going from there. And with these things, it's never too early to start building on those relationships.
Sure.
Personally, I was always really scared about, I guess, approaching them too early, because I was afraid that, hang on a second, our product is really shit. It's going to be embarrassing to talk to them and show them this product. But we got out of our comfort zone. We forced ourselves to. And the process that it's taken us to is pretty much we go to them, we say, hey, what's your feedback? We're not selling you anything. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But what's your feedback on something like this? Would it help your current recruitment process? How, getting a few more insights on that. And then pretty much they'll give us feedback. We'll go back to the drawing board, build out, iterate, improve our platform. And then we'll go to them again in, say, a month or two and be like, okay, we actually implemented your feedback. What are your thoughts now? And so it's going through that process until you get to a point where they're like, oh, I really like your platform. Here's my money. And it's more of an organic sales process, I guess, versus the typical, buy my product now, which is something that's becoming increasingly ineffective these days. So
for sure. It's pretty funny because I know that there would be boomers who would hear like 10 before 10 and it would kind of make their skin crawl and they'd be like, oh my goodness, what are these millennials come up with now? But that's actually a really, really helpful piece of advice. And I think it's definitely something that if you are particularly in the sales role or you're looking to sell your product or gain feedback, that's definitely something useful.
Yeah.
I mean, we found that one of the best things for us was looking at the negative comments on our YouTube videos was because the reality is that kind of at least kind of 80% of negative comments are just feedback. It's just actual advice, at least for our product anyway. Like if it was to do with the sound quality or the filming or anything like that, or our body language or anything like that, that's always way more helpful than and it's often way more genuine than just asking people, what do you think? So that's definitely super helpful. I think that's basically going to wrap it up as far as I can tell. Now, is there any closing things or things you would want to leave the audience with? Obviously the aim of this series is to kind of capture the highs and lows, the journey and the spirit of the entrepreneur, particularly the young person who's trying to build their own business. Is there any closing remarks or things you would want to leave the audience with in that regard? Yeah,
I think if I was to think about my younger self, so I was really fortunate to get in the startup scene since the age of 15. And so my exposure to it has been there. But the biggest thing that I've learnt is with these things, it's never about, building something really, really quickly for the sake of building it and then getting as much investment as you can and just launching it. There's so many different processes involved. And so I guess, especially if you're starting a business, straight out of high school or at the university level, I don't think you should be placing this pressure on yourself to, be that sort of Y Combinator level startup of, 20% month-on-month growth and low customer acquisition cost. It's just focusing on, can I solve this problem, even in the smallest of ways, and having that mindset of just constantly focusing on the problem rather than what you're trying to build would help massively. Because, for us, even we said to ourselves, if we can help 10 people a month, right? It's not a massive amount, but if we can help even just 10 students a month, that makes us worthwhile. That makes what we do something impactful. It doesn't have to be at a large scale. It doesn't have to be at a small scale. It's just, do I care about this problem? Do I want to solve it? Yes. And then that whole process of how you get there is an amazing journey of a lot of the highs and the lows, and not knowing what the heck you're doing sometimes. But that process of working it out, whenever you get stuck, it will always bring you back to the reason of why you're doing this in the first place. Are you doing this from a superficial front? And I don't mean to downgrade that. I definitely had a personal experience where with the previous startup, I did it because I just wanted to start a startup, which is why I'm saying this, that it really does make a difference in terms of your ability to succeed, based on, do you actually care about what you're trying to impact or the community you're trying to impact. So,
For sure. Well, there's something in that for everyone, I think.
That's
mums and dads, kids at home. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
What is the best ways to contact you /Logic / do anything to do with your platform?
Awesome. So you guys can definitely check out our LinkedIn page. You can stalk me. I have a really unique surname, Lillicrap, CRAP. Yes, I know, it's great. So you'll be able to find me there. And then we also have a Facebook page, LogieQ. So from there, you guys can email us at ask@logiq.com and then we can go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. In the midst of all the madness and the chaos that's coming, and still here.
Social distancing still.
Absolutely. We're doing our best.
Yeah.
Thank you, and see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks.